Good morning. Today on Periscope at CROSH, we are talking to Ayden Robertson, who has just completed a master's degree. He's very, very close. He will be defending next week, and he's here to talk to us about his research project. Good morning, Ayden. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Good. Can you tell us just a little bit about your research? What was it about? What did you do?
So, in the past, again, for the past decade, Ministry of Natural Resources, who is our partner in this research project, has realized they're fire rangers who are the individuals who go out in the bush, fight these forest fires, protecting Canadian landscapes and protecting rural communities from the damaging effect of wildfires. They've noticed that this group of individuals has a high rate of injury relative to the rest of the individuals in their organization. And frequently, fatigue is cited as a cause for these injuries. So we know things that cause fatigue are things such as high energy expenditure, like intense physical demands, poor nutrition, lack of recovery time, not enough opportunity to sleep. So we kind of wanted to figure out a way to gauge how these factors might be influencing fatigue in these fire rangers, and then potentially develop strategies with which to reduce the rate of injury in their occupation.
Very neat. So where did you do your research? Did you actually do your research in the field with the fire rangers?
Yep, so we partnered with Northern Ontario Fire Base here in the province, and we had a population of fire rangers wear some of our data collection equipment. So we had them wear some heart rate variability monitors, as well as carry iPods around, which we all gave them. The idea with the methodology we used was that we couldn't be in several places at once. Canada being such a large province. These individuals get deployed, some maybe in Ontario, some maybe in Northwest Territories, some in BC, and we can't be everywhere at once, only one researcher. So we had to have a methodology that would allow us to get all this data from afar and give them the ability to collect it on their own. So we gave them essentially a package with all the data collection equipment. They bring it back after they went on deployment. We'd analyze the data. And from that, we were able to discern their energy expenditure on a daily basis, as well as things such as their nutritional quality, which is a big thing that we're trying to influence as well. Developing strategies to potentially increase the amount of energy they intake, because we've realized from our data that they're high energy expenditure, but they're not consuming enough calories. And the calories they're consuming aren't necessarily those that you potentially want to fuel yourself for highly intense activities. The term we're throwing around is occupational athletes. The idea being that this is an occupation. If you consider it in terms of professional athletics, you'll have a preseason, an in-season, and off-season period, very much like the fire rangers here. They'll have much of the year to do whatever else they do as an occupation, but the summertime is their seasonal occupation. You've got to be in firefighting shape and be ready to deal with the harsh environment that you're exposed to for 6 months of the year, potentially.
Okay, so maybe you can tell me a little bit more about the equipment that you use. So you mentioned that you monitored heart rate, and you also used an iPod, which, I mean, I wouldn't think of an iPod when I'm thinking about scientific data. So maybe you can tell me a little bit more about the two different instruments that you used.
Yeah, so we used heart rate variability monitors, which are a little bit more than a traditional heart rate monitor. This one actually measures the beat-to-beat time differences. And so from that, we did a validation study previous to this because we wanted to make sure that the energy expenditure estimates that we're getting from these devices are comparable to those that you'd say get in a laboratory setting. So we did a validation study here in the laboratory at Laurentian, comparing it directly to indirect calorimetry measured on a treadmill with a gas analyzer. So we found that the heart rate variability estimates of energy expenditure are very accurate, and we were confident to use those in the field. The iPods are also, so we used an audiovisual food diary, and this is a kind of an adaptation of a method that's been used here at Laurentian previously, typically in schools wherein people photograph the meals of the children before and after they consume, and be able to gauge how much they consume that way. The advantage of the video was that we could have a video with all perspectives of the food that they're eating, and they can narrate things such as, for example, my coffee here, I have 1 cream, which you can't necessarily tell just by looking at it. And then so we took all that data, analyzed it all, put it in the computer, and it spits out complete nutritional quality profile, as well as the energy content, which we can then compare to the energy expenditure.
Okay, so you keep mentioning energy expenditure. Can you maybe explain that just in a way that our general audience might explain? Is it literally how much energy you're
So if we talk, everybody talks about burning calories, right? That's basically what we're measuring here. So we wanted to see how many calories they burn on a daily basis.
Okay.
And so we're finding that they typically were comparable to populations such as competitive athletes and military personnel during training exercises. And so our estimates are comparable to also previous literature on wildland firefighters in, say, places like America and Australia. However, no research has been done specific to the Canadian landscape, so we wanted to kind of tackle that problem and gauge what might be unique about this working environment, energy demand-wise.
Okay, and what did you find? Are they expending a lot of energy compared to what they're consuming, or maybe they're just not consuming the right types of energy?
They are expending quite a bit of energy. It's not unrealistic to be able to match that with your calorie consumption. Part of the issue, though, being when you're doing these demanding physical activities, it's not like you want to be having a whole hearty meal while you're doing it. So, I mean, physical activity does blunt your appetite. So we are trying to develop these strategies to promote snacking behaviors and promote energy-dense foods, which they can consume before, throughout, and after, to fuel themselves, keep themselves going, and then refuel at the end of the day to prep for another shift. Because these are individuals who may work up to 2 weeks in a row, 8 to 16-hour shifts a day, and then only have a 2-day recovery period to have to do it all over again if it's an intense fire season. So we're trying to develop these strategies to give them the tools that they need to come out of it not being fatigued and to operate at their peak performance in order to maintain their safety. Because again, fatigue being the reason they're citing is a lot of injuries in terms of slip, trips, and falls, lack of coordination, hurting yourself with a piece of equipment, and again, these are all things that we can curb with strategies to mitigate physical and mental fatigue.
Perfect. Well, maybe we'll do one last question. So if I were an Ontario Fire Ranger, and it was my very first season,
okay.
so I didn't really know a lot about how the work was going to be or what I needed to prep for, what would you tell me to do as far as maybe what I should eat, what I should, if I should start working out? Do you have any kind of recommendations around that?
In the lead up to your first fire season, I would say get as fit as you can. There is the annual WFX fitness test, which the fire rangers have to pass. It is quite an arduous test. It simulates their working environment quite accurately. And it's no joke, it does require you to be relatively fit for the test. And it's all a measure of keeping these individuals safe. It's a relatively new tool that they've instituted as of 2012, but it's been ongoing development for the past 15, 20 years as a fitness standard in this population. As well, during fire deployment, I'd say just don't be scared of eating, like out in the bush, on deployment for 14 days, don't be scared to eat as much as you can. Get your carbs in. I know people misconception regarding carbs. Carbohydrates are the fuel that you need for this high intensity activity, and it's important to get an intake of carbs throughout the day. So don't be scared of trail mixes, Cliff Bars, granola bars, things like that. Keep them on you. Have a bite every 15-20 minutes. It'll keep you going throughout the day and prevent that crash that is midday.